Hi, my name is Sara, or Morgan the Fairy when on stage, and I'm gonna talk about how I explore my gender identity through performance.
Hi, my name is Oliver and I'm a trans guy who make videos about LGBTQIA+ people where they get to talk about anything that they want that somehow relates to them being queer. In November, I was sent to Italy by the European Forum of LGBTI+ Christian groups on border duties, and I took the opportunity to arrive one day early to meet up with a cool local queer in Milano.
My name is Sara, and my stage name as drag performer is Morgan the Fairy. I am an asexual, genderfluid person. My pronouns are they, them in English. In Italian, I do what I can because Italian is a pretty gendered language. So I go for whatever pronouns it's fit for the situation and the occasion, preferably he, they pronouns in drag.
In this video, they have chosen to talk about their journey of exploring and figuring out their gender identity.
My journey of self-discovery and coming out as a gender fluid person has been quite peculiar. It's been a recent coming out. It has been around 2020 during the pandemic because during that time everyone had a lot of time to think about themselves and ask themselves questions and put everything in question as I said. And the way I understood that was through costuming, through cosplay and through playing a character. To keep myself busy during the time, I used to do TikToks when I played different characters, and I tried playing some masculine characters. I was really feeling it. I was feeling good in their skin, and that started to sparkle questions in me about myself. Questions I never really asked myself until then. And then looking back, I started to notice some patterns, some little things that made up a very specific picture, which brought to me coming out as gender fluid and being very happy in my gender identity at the moment. I feel very lucky to live it very euphorically and very, very peacefully. I have a very nice group of friends around me who are very welcoming and very accepting. Sometimes they are even more validating towards my pronoun than myself, because sometimes I forget to gender myself correctly while they do.
Drag was also an important part of this journey.
I also have the luck to have a very strong queer community here in Milan, where I had the chance to do my debut as a drag artist, as a drag king. I consider myself a king, even if Morgan is more on the androgynous, gender fluid side themselves, so I still like the definition of king.
Let's get back to the patterns that Sara saw when looking back on their life.
The questions and the patterns I started to notice is that since I was a very small child, I never really cared about my gender and what gender I did identify with. I used to play pretend a lot as a child. It was my favorite game ever, and I used to pretend I was a certain character. My favorite one when I was very little, very little, was Mowgli from the Jungle Book, and I very strongly identified myself into Mowgli, and I didn't care that he was a boy or also Alvin the chipmunk. As you can see, I still wear red in his honor. That's not it, but he could be. He's also a superstar like me, so this was Morgan talking. And I didn't care about the fact that they were considered boys or male characters, and also I was lucky to have this thing accepted by my family with something like, haha, that's cute, that's very queer, clever, that's fun, and so they were very accepting. But the matter is, until puberty, until I hit the teenage years, I didn't care about my gender. I was introduced to theater and to performative arts also very early, about during primary school. And I used to play male roles, and I was so happy and so validated by it. They gave me the opportunity to play with myself, to explore certain things about myself. I remember this play at primary school when I played Robin Hood, and I was so happy to play Robin Hood because it was so cool. Not that I ever considered female things to be less cool or less interesting. It just didn't matter. What mattered to me, it was that it was something I could identify with, that I could feel safe in a way. So I really went on with this very cute, very fun exploration of my almost absence of gender.
This all changed when they started modeling.
The actual issues began in my early 20s when I used to work as a model for photography. What I realize now is that I put on a performance of femininity to be accepted, because my ad kind of triggered this thought that the only way I can be good for something is to be hyper feminine, very sexy, very just what a woman should be. That's that's a really ugly thing to say, I know, but that was basically what was going through my head. But I realize now, and I think I said it before, that it was a performance of femininity. And this is basically what I realized, that gender and what we express through it, most of the time, not for everyone, but for me at least, it was a performance. It was something I could play with. For the case of my hyperfemininity, it was almost a cage I put myself in, and it wasn't very nice. But then I realized I could free myself from it. And since it was a performance, I was the one that could write the script of this performance. And it was a really nice realization. It was kind of a going back to my early years when I could decide who I wanted to be.
They found ways to get back to the playfulness around gender that they had when they were a kid.
A great help in this journey, as I mentioned before, came through cosplay, costuming, also LARP, live action role play. When you get the chance to be someone else in a safe environment. And this really gives you the opportunity to explore a side of you you don't give yourself the chance to live maybe in your daily life. And sometimes you are put face to face with a part of you. Even when you are playing, when you are performing, you are put face to face with a part of you that really exists, that is authentic. And you say, okay, I think I have forsaken and forgotten this part of me. Maybe it's time to give it a space to express themselves. Basically, this is what happened with my gender identity. I said, okay, I have this part of me, which is not completely feminine, and most of all, it's not feminine in the way I have performed femininity so far. I have this thing of me. What do I want to do with that? So while playing a character, while playing with something, with a part, I think you can get to be your most authentic self.
Sara also brings this into their drag.
This also influences my drag, because Morgan can allow themselves to be a lot of things that Sara can't. They are way more flirty. I am pretty extravagant in my daily life, I must say, especially in my way of dressing. I've always dressed in alternative styles, gothic, and a lot of stuff, but Morgan can allow themselves to wear glitters on their face, to wear very extravagant clothing. They take inspiration from the 70s and the 80s, especially the glam rock era. But also they take a bit of the Victorian era, and as I said, they can allow themselves to be a lot of things that Sara cannot, but that Sara is. But sometimes for people who are socialized as females, you can't really do a lot of stuff. You can take space. You can't be flirty, otherwise you get misunderstood or you get given names. You have to keep a sort of meek appearance. It's very easy to be targeted if you put a spotlight on yourself as a female or as a female socialized person. So Morgan can get to perform all these things that are denied to Sara, but at the same time they both get to live it. And also Morgan has a way to be political that Sara can't or can't always be, because I suffer from depression and the bad things going on in the world are really heavy to think about, to do stuff about. So when Morgan puts some of their thoughts, some of their also anger in their performance, it's a way for both of them to express something in maybe a fun way that makes you think.
Morgan has been a political outlet for Sara since the beginning.
My debut number as a drag artist was about immigration and about the rejection that people have for different people. And I painted a caricature of a very famous right-wing politician and I brought it on stage, and it was very liberating because sometimes you just want to scream and say something and be angry at something and you can't because your voice is silenced. So when you perform, you have the freedom to say what you think, and it is kind of protected because the stage and the makeup and the costume gives you a shield, a sort of barrier between you and the world. So you can say, yeah, that's just a performance, don't worry. That's not really something revolutionary. I'm not at all trying to awaken consciousness when I do that, but actually I am. So I think the concept of performance is very powerful, especially for us queer people.
And lastly, if you can relate to Sara's story, they have a message for you.
So if you are questioning your gender, if you're having also issues with it, or maybe you're just exploring it, my suggestion is to actually play with it. I know it's not always the best option because it's not always safe to do that. But if you can also research inside your community or even do that online or even for yourself. But if you can play with your gender and explore, think of it like a childlike game when you dress up and play pretend. It's a way to feel more at ease with your gender, because I know that many people struggle with it. It can be an actual pain for many people to come at terms with their own gender. So this might be a way to lighten it a little bit, make it a bit more playful and peaceful. It is your safe place to express yourself. You don't owe anybody else anything. It is your blank canvas to paint, and you can go out with that, or you can just stay within yourself. But that playfulness, in my opinion, is the fastest way to love, and to love yourself and to love who you are, because anguish and pain can take a lot from love. Introducing the little element of play can be the key to a lot of good vibes and self-love coming back to you, because you guys deserve it. Guys as general terms.
If you enjoyed watching that video, please like, comment, subscribe and share the video. I really appreciate you showing your love in that way. If you also want to support the channel financially, that's possible via Patreon, but really no pressure. See you next time!